time we're taking a little bit of a different approach. And yes, we are going to talk about transit, traffic and transportation. But before we get into that, I'm just going to do a little self-introduction about how I came to be in Wilsonville and how I got to this spot of wanting to run. And so as we get started, for just this little bit of an introduction, maybe everybody could mute themselves. And then we'll hear from Aaron Woods in a little bit. He's going to help kind of moderate the discussion. So we'll start with a very brief PowerPoint. This is my family. I wanted to introduce you to my husband, Bob Renfro, and he's on the call. And Bob is a recently retired librarian, worked with Multnomah County for many years, and he retired just as COVID was hitting. So that's Bob, a wonderful man. And he's a lot of help to me in this campaign, and you'll see him volunteering at the library, volunteers with the Library Foundation as well. And the lower picture is me with my 3 sons. They're all grown up now. One is with the US Army, just got transferred to Korea, where he works in public affairs. My youngest son there is a graphic designer in Los Angeles working for Technicolor. And then my middle son in the sweater is a music teacher, and he is a musician and recording artist as well. And that's a picture of me with one of my 2 grandchildren, Susie, at her 1-year-old birthday, when they let her have some Oreos, and she thought that was just the greatest thing. So I also have another grandchild, Susie's brother, who's 12. So wonderful family activities that we have, and they come to Wilsonville when they can and go for walks and bike rides. We'll go to the next one. This is, I put this one up as a way to start because I have this full circle story that actually kind of goes with Condors. My family was in San Diego when I was really young, and I was introduced to a big exhibition they had there about the California condors that were going extinct. And they kept going downhill for many years after that until they reached the lowest level of 22 condors in the 80s. So just keep that in mind. We'll go to the next slide. And not too long after that, my family moved to Oregon. We lived in Southern Oregon on the Oregon coast, and we raised sheep. We had 600 ewes, and at the time they all had lambs. We could have well over 1,000 sheep. And that picture of a horse is a horse named Rocky, and that's my cousin Patrick DeConcini saddling him up. And the little picture there is all my cousins with my siblings. They would come out in the summers during shearing season and work with us. And actually that horse Rocky has a tie to Wilsonville because the man we bought him from at the time when he was about 17 now lives here in Wilsonville. And he is the one he's very famous for training this Rocky. And it's because we came to visit Rocky's former owner in Wilsonville a lot that we ended up deciding we wanted to move here. And then up on the top, that's just my graduation from Oregon State University with a degree in animal science. I continued that interest since being involved at the San Diego Zoo. Now we'll go to the next slide. After graduation, I worked for the 4-H program for a little while, and then I came back to manage my family's sheep ranch. And while doing that, we found out about an opportunity to, if somebody would take on the job of leading a fundraising drive in the community, we could get public radio to put in a transmitter on this Humbuck Mountain. And so it's just out of college, but I really...
Stop.
Pardon? Okay, I didn't know what, so we raised money. I led a little fundraising drive, got a lot of community members who were interested together, and we raised the money, and the public radio put in the transmitter, and that was the first time they'd ever had access to that kind of radio there. And it goes over a really wide area of Curry County, and they still have it they still have it there today. And so that was really how I got into the field of fundraising that I'm in today. and also into doing community projects like this that I've just really found rewarding. So let's go to the next slide. Just a little bit on some of my fundraising projects. On the lower left, you can see one about Harold Schnitzer Diabetes Health Center. I work for OHSU Foundation for many years and did a lot of different fundraising for them for medical research, the School of Medicine, and also to establish the Harold Schnitzer Diabetes Health Center. Worked on that very closely with Mr. Schnitzer. It was a really great project. There's a little article there about another project I did for Silverton Hospital. That's a picture of a lady who wanted to give her, did give her house to the hospital. Another community project that people who are very committed to things are really great to work with. They want to find ways to move them forward. That's what I really enjoy about my career. And then this much different picture where it says a burning need is a page out of the annual report of the Nature Conservancy in Oregon. And that was one of the projects we worked on for many years there. And it was really, not only were we raising money, but we were bringing a lot of different people together with different concerns, different priorities, and a lot of conflict about the idea of thinning forests. And that is around the Ashland watershed, where the forests they look really beautiful, but they've gotten really dense, and a lot of Douglas fir. That's a different kind of tree that used to be there. It basically presents a huge fire hazard. And that picture was several years ago. And unfortunately, we saw some of the problems with that just recently. But the collaboration that we did there was bringing the community together to find a common ground and to get behind the idea of thinning the forest for improving habitat and also improving the quality of life and also jobs in the forest industry that had gone away because it's so much opposition to logging. So that was a really gratifying project there. And I think we can go to the next slide. So that brings me to, those are some of the things I was working on when I was on the city council. And I won't read this whole list to you, but these are some of the projects I worked on. And I just took a couple of comments from an article they did when I finished my term. And just, you would do a whole lot of different things when you're on the city council. And some of them are as small as, deciding how to fix a sidewalk and how you're going to contract for paving to very big projects. I think we have one more slide there. Yes, so this is the last slide of my self-introduction, I believe. Let me just check here. Yes, and the reason I put this up here is I've been working with Condors again in the last few years with the San Diego Zoo and with the Oregon Zoo. And we actually do collaborate with the San Diego Zoo now, in fact. And you might know that the Oregon Zoo, they have some condors at the zoo, but they also have an off-site condor rearing and hatching facility out in a remote part, they call it a remote part of Clackamas County. And those condors actually had to be evacuated in the fire. And they're all fine now, but these are condors that live in a really remote area, so they don't imprint on humans. And they hatch these eggs and they're taken very good care of. And then the chicks are released. And so we're going to see probably, and we do have condors flying free. The population, wild population, is now up to 500. And there's the next project coming up is partnering with the Yurok tribe in Northern California for a release site. And we may see condors flying free over Oregon again. So there are lots of different partners in this one. And this is why I brought this up as just another example of working with a lot of different people to get a big thing to happen. One of the partners that participates in the Oregon Zoo's project is actually a group of hunters, and they do voluntary education to get people to use non-lead ammo. And that helps cut down on some of the causes of death to these condors when they're picking up lead ammo in their feed. So that's a little just summary of the kind of person I am. And I really enjoy doing these kinds of projects that create a lot of good and can bring together some various forces of interest and strength to get to get us farther down the road on something. And I really enjoyed that kind of work when I was on the city council. So with that, I think I would like to introduce you to hand it over to Aaron, and we can get into the project, the discussion.
Great, thank you, Julie. Wonderful slideshow there. You know, it gives us a little bit more of your background and where you came from. A lot of these things I didn't know about you. Very interesting there, especially the condors, or what most of us call vultures. At any rate, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Woods, and I will be your moderator this evening, along with Brian Everett, who will be our facilitator handling questions submitted by you for this third town hall for Julie Fitzgerald, who, as you know, is running for as a candidate for Mayor of Wilsonville. Myself, I'm a 24-year resident living here in Wilsonville Meadows. And like Julie, I've devoted a lot of my time serving on city boards, committees, and task force. And that's one of the reasons why her candidacy resonated so much with me. But as you can all imagine, we're all on this Zoom call. And of course, we would have preferred to have had this town hall in person. But unfortunately, in light of the COVID epidemic, we had this Zoom venue, which of course is a safe way for Julie to engage with you. However, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping here. I'd like to make everyone aware that this town hall is being recorded. This will allow Julie and her team to be able to listen to all of the questions that you have submitted and the comments that have been made. And then potentially she will post many of these for those who could not attend tonight. I'd like to ask everyone to please mute yourself. This is extremely important so we're not distracted by background noise. This will ensure that we don't be disrupted and have a nice, clean town hall. Okay. All right, Julie, I'm going to turn it back to you now.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. And I just wanted to ask. I see one of our candidates, at least, is on the call here. Council President Kristen Ackerval. If you'd like to just wave and say hi, there she is. And there may be another Joanne Linville. Is she on the call?
She is.
Okay. Hello, Joanne. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's get started for the reason that we're here tonight. Tonight, we want to focus our questions in a very important area that all of us, I think I'll use the term find near and dear, and that's traffic. Traffic and transportation. Julie has gathered a number of questions and has summarized them into two primary areas. As I just said, one is traffic and the other is transportation. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Julie.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Well, you know, I'm not going to be going on and on about a specific type of signal correction or the way they built a particular road. I think that would get pretty boring for us. But I wanted to start at a really high level with transit and talking about our smart transportation system. And just there are some really interesting aspects to this. And I was kind of thinking of the picture that I showed of the forest project that we did with the Nature Conservancy, in fact, which they are still doing that project today. And that is, we have a lot of conflict and discussion about transit in all sectors of our region, I think, and how does it help and what does it do for us? So one of the really interesting things about our smart transportation system is it really was started in response to TriMet. And I think I'm understanding that the Chamber of Commerce actually had a big role in this because they had looked at the fees that all the businesses were paying because of a law that was passed that if you have a business in this area in a district governed or that's in the TriMet district, you would have to pay a certain amount of payroll tax and it would go to TriMet. And then TriMet would use their own business planning practices to decide where they're going to send what buses and how often throughout the whole area. And I was not here at this time, but the story is that in looking at the figures of what was being spent in Wilsonville and also what was being collected, it seemed like it was very lopsided. And so in 1988, I believe was the year, they had a discussion and agreement, and basically the city of Wilsonville gained the right to manage its own transportation system. And there was a moment, I also just went over this recently with our transit director, Dwight Brashears, and it took a little while to get it going. And there was a moment where a letter came from TriMet and said, if you're not getting this transit system started soon, we're coming back in and starting up the TriMet again. But lo and behold, they did get the project started. It was called WART for a while, and then it was later changed to SMART. And the great thing about SMART still is that the fees per payroll are still quite a bit less than TriMet. TriMet charges 0.7737% of payroll, and one of our neighboring systems, Can Be TriMet, charges 0.6%, and SMART has been charging 0.5% for quite a few years. I don't think it's been raised for quite a while. And there are a number of other revenue sources that go into SMART here besides the payroll tax. They do a lot of good grant writing. They've received incredible infusions of support for the program from various sources. So they're wonderful at generating sources of revenue to run the program, in addition to what is paid by all of our businesses who really have no choice but to pay that transit tax. And if they were paying it to TriMet, it would be quite a bit more. So the other thing that I find that may change for us here in the near future as the city grows is, what about the areas of development in Coffee Creek, where we've got our business development area, and as that grows, we'll see a lot more businesses coming in. Well, unfortunately, that area is still under the transportation management of TriMet. So we would have to do a lot of negotiation, and I certainly hope that we can, because TriMet can see that as that develops, there will be more businesses, and they would very much like to stay in that area and collect that revenue. Now, the Frog Pond area is also, it wasn't in our urban growth boundary when SMART started, and so it is currently under that TriMet area or kind of governance. And I understand that TriMet is not as eager to keep control of that because it's a residential area and they wouldn't have as much revenue. So those are some really interesting things to pay attention to. And when I'm mayor, I plan to really work on that and do everything possible to make sure that we can have SMART managing the areas of the city of Wilsonville, because we have an exceptional transportation system with SMART. We're the envy of all the cities around us. Mr. Brashears just told me when he goes to meetings and talks to Tualatin and other cities, they would love to start something like this because they could make it match their needs much better than what they get. But I believe it's nearly impossible to do this these days. So that's one thing ahead for our smart transportation system. And also when I was, before COVID hit, I did ride SMART some. My husband Bob used it more than I did. I would usually walk and take Wes, which took me right to my work at the zoo. Very convenient, far easier than driving. That just so happened to be where my work was. It was easy. It depends on where your route is. But one of the last projects I did when I was on council was to update our transit master plan. And that was to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to run the routes where people need them. And we did make some improvements, find ways to connect with other systems so that people who want to use transit, don't have a car, can use it. And as time goes on, we want to see more and more of our traffic problems alleviated by transit if we have a really good system that more people want to use. So does anybody have any questions or comments about that topic? I was just kind of riffing on some of the things that I see as a project ahead for SMART.
So we do have a couple questions that aren't specifically on SMART, but are ones related to transportation. And the other one was a question from a prior town hall that we wanted to re-ask. Do you want
Okay.
those now, or do you want to do those at the end of the?
I'm not seeing what they are. What do you think makes sense? Because you can see them.
I don't think they're specific to these topics, so maybe we can do
Okay,
them right at the end.
Let's
Yep.
keep going. Okay. So wanted to move to Aaron. I guess I'll hand it back to you now for a transition.
Yeah, you know, one of the things here, Brian, are you going to put that list up of the completed projects and also the projects that we have coming up here in the city? I think we have a slide on that we can show. What this is here, and by the way, can everybody see that? If you can't, just kind of yell, you know, maybe you can make that as big as you can, Brian. But when you look at this list here for the last 5 years of projects that were completed, and then also the projects that we have planned. So Julie, why don't you speak to these a little bit and
Okay.
talk about particularly the ones that were completed, since I believe you were part of some of this.
Well, I thought this was an interesting list because it's really easy. We just get busy doing what we're doing, and we do have certainly traffic jams that come up very often, mostly related to I-5. And so the traffic problems have not gone away. But I did think it's good to take a look at the 9 projects that have been completed in the last 5 years and know that some of those have changed traffic patterns and have improved. So then looking ahead at the 5-year planned project list, they've just kind of highlighted a number of those there. And you've got there are many more than they've listed there, but they've got bike and pedestrian improvements along with Canyon Creek, the Beckman Road traffic signal. That's one that I wanted to bring up as an example, in fact, because people, you know, when we hear about development coming in, everybody gets concerned about what is going to happen with the traffic. You're building more houses. How are they going to keep that from just causing more and more traffic jams? And so there is a methodology to that, and they call it concurrence. So when a project is on the table as a future project, let's say it's building a school, before they go ahead with the school, they have to look at project the traffic impacts of the traffic coming and going from that school at certain times of day, and they blend it in with all of the other projects that they've already agreed to in the nearby area, and have to look at what needs to happen to best manage that traffic. And so, of course, at Canyon Creek and Beckman, they needed a traffic signal. And the city also has to look at how are we going to manage the cost, how are we going to pay for that, and so forth. So the reason I bring that up is the mayor and the city council have a role, along with all of the citizens and the neighbors and the people, the businesses who are impacted by that, in speaking up and getting involved in that, so that we do the best we can to meet the citizen expectations. And so that's one thing I want to be doing as mayor is we do have, you know, a lot of outreach, a lot of opportunities and hearings. These things are put on online and everything for people to attend. However, that doesn't mean you really get as much attendance as you would like. So as mayor, I have mentioned many times that I want to involve more people and just do a little bit more neighborhood outreach and some periodic neighborhood town halls, so more people can see how those things are done and give some input along the way. So I was going to go back to that slide. We don't have to show the slide again that Aaron had up, but we all know about I-5 as our biggest traffic problem. And at the end of the year in December, we expect to, right about there, December, January, the city expects to have a presentation by ODOT of the projected, what is the best design and what is the projected cost of really improving the Boon Bridge, which is our real choke point. And so a lot of work has gone into that. The city contributed some money. Representative Neron helped get some seed money to work on that. And it's not going to happen right away, certainly. These are big projects, huge projects, and there's a lot of competition for the federal money. So what I want to do there is be a mayor who is really involved with our neighboring cities. There's a role, again, we talked about the Chamber of Commerce and local businesses who have their employees who want to come here and work, but they're impacted by the traffic on I-5. And so I foresee a very collaborative, energetic effort to lobby for and with our neighboring cities to get the money we need to get that Boon Bridge fixed, because it really is our biggest problem. And then also along with that is keeping an eye on what is happening, what are projects that might be developing north of us and south of us that could impact the city of Wilsonville and our access to I-5. And I think it's important for the city of Wilsonville to stay involved and have a seat at the table with those planning projects, whether it is metro projects that are going on, other cities, ODOT, the Aurora Airport, and certainly TriMet as well. And the objective is to be involved, see what's going on, and represent our citizens to the best we can to keep things moving as well as we can.
Yeah, Julie, I'm so glad that you mentioned the I-5 because I think all of us, of course, have experienced the issues with I-5, but also, just hearing what you just said concerning the Boon Bridge project and that, but also, as we all know, I believe on this call, we have a very vocal city. And when I say vocal, I mean, citizens love to give their input, and they do. So hearing that you said that you will continue that, I think it's a very important part of your being mayor, having that openness and making sure that we have the listening ear to all of our citizens. So I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm sure everyone on the phone is as well. Well, looking at the time here, I think we should open it up for questions now. Brian, what have we had come in? And I know you mentioned we had some, and I know one from last time, but I believe we also had one from someone who may have had to have left the call. But if we have some other questions, why don't you start?
Sure. So the first question that we have is from Nicole, and she's wondering what your views are on the tolling discussion at the regional level, as well as exploring buses on shoulders.
Oh, yes. Well, I think there are more questions than answers related to the tolling project, or the tolling proposal. And I think that still needs to be studied because the way it looks now, Wilsonville could end up with a lot of people using our side streets as a shortcut. And hopefully there are some remedies for that, but I think a lot of work needs to be done to see how that is going to work and how it's going to impact our city. And then there's another question on, is that going to be the model that ODOT is going to be using for all of its road improvements? And I think we just need to find out more about how that can work overall and be reasonably beneficial to the neighboring cities. What I like about the concept is it's simply that something has to be done to relieve traffic on I-5. We've got a lot of people moving to the Northwest. We have a huge amount of freight, a huge amount of cars. So there's no magic solution to relieve it. And we also have to find a lot of money to fix that Abernathy Bridge. So it's one of the solutions that still needs work. And there was one other part to that.
Yeah, the second part was about buses on shoulders, using a shoulder lane.
You know, I'm not an expert on that. I remember we actually talked about that when I was on the council as a reasonable solution. If the shoulder is improved to a degree that buses can move along at a reasonable speed, and so keep those people in the buses moving, and it actually could make bus transportation more appealing to some people because you could get out of traffic.
Great. The next question we have comes from Susan, and it is the Boon Bridge what's causing the slowdown coming into Wilsonville?
It is named as the #1 choke point. And there are a couple of other factors around that, the proximity of the ramps and people coming on and off of right about the, in kind of a close proximity that ends up causing accidents and other things. But yes, that is the main culprit.
The next question comes from Kyle. In 2013, you voted for an ordinance 703 and 717, which significantly increased the number of apartments being built along the highway, totaling 781 units. This vote had a negative impact on parking, livability, and traffic. Parking spaces are an ongoing point of frustration for residents. Can you explain your vote, which exacerbated these issues?
Well, that was an area that was zoned for that kind of building. It was zoned for multifamily housing, and we had a big demand for that kind of housing at that time. The economy also was in such a, that was a product that was in demand at that time. And I felt like that was, I'm glad we voted for that.
Thank you.
Another follow-up question that we had from a prior one kind of goes along that same line too. Is there something in the decisions that you made during council over the last 4 years that you had disagreed with that you would have made differently?
Right, that was a question that we had at the very end of the last town hall. And I might have answered that. I think I did, but I'll answer it again. The one that comes to mind, there are probably others. If I went through all of the minutes, I would probably find something else that I would have thought differently in hindsight. But the one that comes to mind is the Frog Pond West. While it has a lot of great qualities to it, it does have different size lots, and people are moving in there. The parks are being built and close to the school. It did not have any opportunities for condos or townhomes that would have provided some more affordable options for some people. And as you saw in the last city survey, that was pretty much the main negative that people had in the survey, not enough housing choice. And we're going to catch up. I think we're going to be able to manage that. So it's going to work out.
Great. And we have a question from Dina. During Ben West's federal run, you endorsed him and donated to his campaign. What was it about Ben that compelled you to support him?
Boy, I'm really glad you asked that, Dina. We haven't met yet. So, and I've heard people saying that somebody's saying online that I endorsed Ben, and I don't remember endorsing him. Maybe I did. I need to ask him about it. But Ben and I have mutual friends. My friends that I've known for many years met Ben and Paul during their work together on the Right to Marry Act. And I remember at that time we were living in Wilsonville, and Ben was not. They were not living in Wilsonville at the time, but they had just told me about working together on that project. And then I remember Dina telling me that Ben had moved to Wilsonville, and I knew what he looked like because he had his picture in a lot of ads that he was working on at that time. And he walked by my house one day, and I asked him, if you're Ben West, and we got acquainted. Very shortly after that, he called me and said he was running for US Congress in the Republican primary, and he was so enthusiastic. He really wanted to do it. And I thought, you know what? That's good that somebody wants to run for office, and I made a $50 contribution. So that's the story.
Great. At the moment, we don't have any other written questions in the chat group. Oh, actually, one just came in. from Susan. Do you have any ideas or plans on how to increase commercial development in Villebois?
Oh, wow, that's a that's a good idea, a good question, Susan. There is a lot of interest in that. You know, I don't know, you know, we all have a different story of how it was when we moved to those of us who live in Villebois. And I remember when Bob and I were looking, they would show us these maps, and you'd see this big display of all the lots and the little shaped lots and bigger lots and parks and all of these things. And there was the most dense area of the development was always planned as that piazza area. That was where there was going to be shopping. I remember there was a little sketch of a lady walking across the piazza carrying a shopping bag. So we probably all remember those kinds of things. Turns out to have been much more difficult than was imagined to get retail operations to take that leap and lease space and start operating. One of the reasons, of course, I think is probably the economic shutdown or the recession. That really slowed things down. So I have asked a lot of questions about what can we do to attract businesses in there. They did talk about that a lot when I was on the council too. They had some consultants in and just discussed kind of human behavior and where people like to shop and when they choose to drive to their old favorite place and can be, even though they could shop right next door, just some of the things that people do. Well, one of the biggest factors was if you really need a lot of people, a lot of new residents in a place to shop enough to support a store. And so we did get slowed down with the apartments there. We slowed down in that piazza construction because of the recession. But the next idea in today's world of retail that I've heard as the most logical way to attract retail there is to go for really small little niche shops, and maybe shops that could be seasonal, that perhaps you would have, you know, like in Charbonneau, they have a tiny little bakery that just really works well. So something that doesn't have a lot of rental cost and can flex with the season. Those are some of the ideas that I've heard, but I find it to be, you know, it's a challenge. We're all changing the way that we shop. And I know there's a lot of effort going into that in the future. And the thing that would help it the most is with more residents moving into that area. So we'll see how it goes. And one of the things I hear from one of the people in the economic development department at the city, people say, well, why don't they bring in a Starbucks, or why don't they bring in this kind of shop? And they advertise, they work with Greater Portland Inc., they network, they do all kinds of things, and one thing leads to another. They also come back to me, and they also often say, you really have to talk to these vendors and see what they're looking at to measure in terms of risk and reward. So hope for the best. I hope it works too.
Great. The next question we've got a couple people asking about. Could you talk a little bit about Smart's DialARide program?
Two of them.
Yes, the Smart DialARide program is, you know, they can call the city, and I'm not going to be a complete expert on this. I don't mean to be a complete encyclopedia on all of the routes and times of Smart, but they have had a DialARide program for many years, and that's helping our seniors and people who have reasons they cannot drive themselves. And so they can call and make an appointment. And we also did improve it to a degree several years ago to save on costs so that they have some kind of set routes to manage the kind of go in between a regular bus route and a DialARide. That's what I remember about DialARide. I can't hear you.
Thank you. Question from Michael is, can you tell us your thoughts on the Aurora Airport expansion?
Well, I know that they are working on I believe a 1,000-foot airport extension there. And the part of that I think most impacts the city of Wilsonville is where we have is really traffic around that airport. And would it bring in a lot more traffic? I think they've planned 500 and some parking spaces in the expansion. And also, what are some of the improvements needed to the intersection at Airport Road and Miley Road that could be considered to manage that? And some of the answers to that are probably forthcoming. The city, I'm a proponent of the city's efforts to be involved in those discussions and really have a seat at the table so that we can understand, how that's going to impact city residents in Wilsonville. Now, there is also, we also hear a lot about jobs that could be new jobs that could be brought in to the area with that expansion. And that would be great. Those jobs would be in Marion County. The airport is unincorporated Marion County. One thing we didn't mention on this call, it wasn't too much a part of it, except for our discussion about the smart and transit or TriMet intersections there at Coffee Creek, is City of Wilsonville has really gone a long way down the road, no pun intended, in developing employment lands at Coffee Creek and Basalt Creek. And so those are just starting to fill out, but we really need to get that going. And that is a big effort and focus of the City of Wilsonville.
Changing topics a little bit, a question from Nicole. How are you feeling about your campaign so far? Are there areas you'd like to improve, and how can we help?
Thank you. Well, you know what, is really busy to run a campaign. And there's a lot about it that's been really fun. I've met so many people. We have a lot of volunteers working. We have people setting up, doing lawn signs. It's been a great way to get to know even more people. And we do have some volunteer, we may be doing some more walking around with door hangers and maybe helping with a postcard mailing, those kinds of things. So it's busy, and I've got a lot of individual Wilsonville citizens who are supporting me, and voting for, or, making small contributions. Really appreciate that. Got a little bit more time to go. And one thing I would like to do, here's an idea that I should have written it down as a thought, is I would like to find out if people in different neighborhoods have a park area where they would like to have me come and talk. We had one set up in one of the neighborhoods near the library, but we were hit with the terrible smoky fires, so we need to reschedule that one. But I think that would be a nice alternative to Zoom. As much as we all really, really love doing Zoom calls, we probably wouldn't mind something in the alternative where we could wear face masks and socially distance. So I'd love to have people let me know if they have a spot for that.
So Julie, what's the best way for them to let you know? Do you want them to go to your website or Facebook or email?
If you go to my website, there is a contact me form there, and that's a great one. Thank you.
From Larry, we have the question, what is your elevator speech for why you're the ideal next mayor for Wilsonville?
Oh, good. The reason I am the ideal next mayor for Wilsonville is that I have, first of all, I've spent my life being interested in this kind of project, this kind of work. I really enjoy bringing people together, solving problems, and moving things forward to a greater good. Everybody doesn't always agree, but there's a way to get there to a place. Obviously, we need to get to a place that is the best for everybody, or we wouldn't be doing them. And I have 4 years experience on the city council. It was a wonderful learning experience, and I met a lot of people on the boards and commissions and budget committee experience, where we have 5 citizens who sit on that budget committee, was one of my favorite parts of the city council as well, because that's where you really get to delve into all the different areas the city is doing, find out why this costs X amount of dollars, and receive input on ways you could change or improve that. So I have that experience, and And I'm just really committed to Wilsonville. I'm a citizen. I've lived here since 2007, and I wouldn't be taking the effort to run for mayor and run a campaign and all of that takes if I didn't want to do a really great job for Wilsonville and just keep it a great place to live.
Great. A follow-up question on that. What would you want to be remembered for as mayor if you were elected?
Well, I think it wouldn't happen by the time I'm mayor. Maybe it would. I would absolutely love to be the one who got the Boon Bridge, be there when the Boon Bridge gets fixed. And it wouldn't be one person, it would be a group effort. So that would be a wonderful accomplishment. And I would also I'm excited about seeing the equitable housing plan and town center develop. And the way that I would like to see those develop is really high quality housing and just continue to improve our pedestrian and bike access. That's one of the things, if you read the city surveys, people are very interested in that. Continuing to keep our tree-lined streets, our parks and connectedness. And that is an area of great interest for me. I didn't hear you.
Right.
Thank you. From Ellie, in November 2018, voters passed the Metro Housing Bond Tax, Measure 26199. How did you vote on the measure and do you support it?
I saw that question on, I don't know where Ellie is here, maybe on the other screen. There you are. Hi.
Yep.
I didn't have a chance to answer that on Facebook. I had such a busy day, and I'll get to it. But when you say, do you support it, mean like, do I agree with it today? Okay. I believe, yes, when that came through, I did vote for that because I feel like I agree that we have a huge housing shortage in our region. And that has helped Wilsonville get started on their equitable housing plan. And I know a lot of other communities find some of the elements of that have helped them solve some of the homeless and housing problems. Thank you.
From Larry, we have, how will Wilsonville be better in 2030 as a result of your leadership?
Well, I'm going to say I would like to have it be our cars we're still able to move through our city. We manage our intersections and improve our traffic functionality as the city grows. People can walk from neighborhood to neighborhood or bike, and the neighborhoods have enough basic amenities near the neighborhood so that it's a it's a well-served neighborhood. We want to have strong businesses. Wilsonville has been known to have, like right now, we have a AAA bond rating. We've had exceptional growth in jobs and the payroll in the last 10 years, and that is a high bar. And I would want to be able to still have a AAA bond rating and be a place that is this the envy of other cities for our family wage jobs and really admirable business economy.
Great. I did get one more question in. What is your opinion about encouraging alternative energy projects such as solar panels on homes and businesses, wind turbines, etc.?
Solar and wind. Well, I am interested in alternative energy. The city has made a real commitment to have all green energy. The city of Wilsonville itself. And so, if there are some ways that the city could partner with other agencies to encourage business residents and businesses to do that, I think that would be a good thing. The elements of those alternative energy sources and which works best and so forth change over time. But I think if we can find ways to economically advance those things in a way that makes sense for the city, I think that would be good. I think it's a balance.
Great. That's the last of the written questions.
Okay.
So let me jump in here and just ask, Julie has shared quite a lot of questions and answers, and it's pretty broad. So, you know, if you have anything else that you can think of, either right now, or if not, please go to her site. You can put your questions there, and I'm sure she will get back to you as soon as possible. But Julie, if we don't have anything else from anyone else, why don't you go ahead and bring us home?
All right. Well, thank you everybody for spending the evening together, all of us, and with me. I really appreciate it. And let me know if you have any other questions, and if you also would like me to help arrange a little stand-up gathering in a park when it's not raining or smoky.
Great.
Thanks very much.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good
Have a
night.
good rest of your evening.